Welcome to day 7 of revision for UPSC previous year question paper and essay. And today I will start with the essay which was asked in 2025. So let's get started. Truth knows no color. In the legal annals of ancient Athens, the drying ground of Areopagus hosted trials under the bare open sky. The judges sat in absolute silence, deliberately shielded from the rhetorical theatricality, theatricality, socio-economic stature, and political affiliations of the accused. The architecture of just the architecture of justice sought a singular transcendental ideal to strip reality of its secondary superficial characteristics so that the bare unvarnished truth could reveal itself. The core of this ancient practice highlights a timeless truth that genuine truth is inherently colorblind. It does not alter its structural nature based on the varying use of human prejudice, political convenience, cultural variation, or ideological alignments. To declare that the truth knows no color is to recognize that objective reality stands completely independent of the subjective lenses through which humanity continuously tries to filter, manipulate, and fragment it. Yet, contemporary global society exists in an era of deep fragmentation, marked by structural post truth realities, hyperpolarized echo chambers, and the weaponization of customized identities. In this environment, the pristine, colorless nature of truth is constantly threatened by political spin, cultural bias, and ideological colorings. Society increasingly encounters a fractured spectrum: my truth versus your truth, red truth versus blue truth, and nationalistic narratives clashing with universal realities. This fragmentation creates a profound human dilemma. When truth is forced to take on a color, it ceases to be truth and degrades into propaganda, prejudice, or selective perception. Therefore, it is essential to re examine the objective core of truth. We must trace how human history, philosophy, politics, economics, and science have either preserved its color purity or suffered deeply by trying to dye it in the temporary colors of opportunistic convenience. You need not to write these heading because we are in practice. That is why these headings are there, so that to understand how the essay is going on. But in the real exam, you need not to write all of these headings and flowcharts. You will see flowcharts as well in this essay. The philosophical and ontological core, the colorless horizon of reality. To understand why truth knows no color, we must first examine its basic philosophical definition. In classical epistemology, truth is defined by correspondence theory, which states that the proposition is true if it matches an objective, independent reality. When the ancient sages declared in the Rig Veda, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, truth is one, though the wise speak of it variedly. They were not suggesting that the truth changes its nature. Rather, they were pointing out that human interpretation can be colorful and varied. The underlying truth remains unified and uncolored. The colors belong entirely to the human observer's eye, not to the object being observed. This idea is beautifully illustrated by Plato's famous allegory of the cave. The prisoners chained inside the cave pursue the shifting, colorful shadows thrown upon the wall as the absolute truth. These shadows represent the distorted colors of societal convention, unexamined opinions, and sensory illusions. It is only when a prisoner breaks free and climbs out into the sunlight that that they see the world as it is, as it actually exists, illuminated by the pure, clear light of the sun. The sun does not color the landscape, it reveals things exactly as they are. In the same way, the pursuit of truth requires a conscious effort to look past the superficial colors of immediate perception to discover the objective principle underneath. The historical dimension, the heavy cost of colored narratives. Throughout the history, whenever societies have tried to color the truth to match their prejudice, prejudices, the results have been disastrous. Totalitarian regimes throughout the 20th century provide clear warnings of this danger. In the Soviet Union, the state rejected traditional genetics because it did not align with communist ideology. Instead, they embraced proletarian science, led by Trofim Lysenko. This politically colored version of biology ignored objective reality, resulting in terrible agricultural failures and widespread famine that cost millions of lives. The state tried to force biology to follow a specific ideological color, but nature refused to comply, showing that objective truth cannot be bent by political willpower. Similarly, the dark history of colonialism shows how powerful nations color truth to justify global exploitation. European empires created the pseudo-scientific theory of scientific racism using distorted biological narratives to claim that white Europeans were naturally superior to other races. This colored truth was used to justify the theft of resources and subjugation of millions across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. By the time the world recognized this narrative as a self-serving lie, centuries of exploitation had already occurred. History shows that whenever truth is dyed in the colors of human arrogance or greed, it leads directly to institutional oppression and human suffering. The constitutional and judicial imperative, the blindfold of justice. In modern democratic governance, the principle that truth knows no color is built directly into legal framework. The universal symbol of justice, a blindfolded woman holding a pair of scales, captures this idea perfectly. The blindfold is not a sign of ignorance, it represents a commitment to objectivity. It means justice must not see the race, caste, gender, economic status, or political power of those who come before the court. The law must look past these superficial colors to evaluate the core facts of the case impartially. In the Indian constitutional framework, this principle is anchored in Article 14, which guarantees equality before the law and equal protection of the laws. The Supreme Court of India has consistently protected this colorless standard of truth in landmark judgments. For example, in the state of Karnataka versus Selvi 2010 case, the court ruled that forcing individuals to undergo narco-analysis or polygraph test violates Article 20, Clause 3, that is protection against the self-incrimination, and the right to privacy under Article 21. The judiciary emphasized that the search for truth must never use methods that violate human dignity or distort justice, reinforcing that the legal discovery of truth must remain fair, objective, and untainted by the administrative overreach. The socio-cultural fabric. Beyond the lines of caste and creed, in social life, human prejudice frequently tries to dye truth in the specific colors of caste, religion, and community identity. This creates fragmented societal narratives where actions are judged not by what was done but by who did it. This tribal thinking distorts social justice, creating double standards where the exact same action is praised when done by one's own group but condemned when done by an outsider. The life and work of Mahatma Gandhi stood as a powerful rejection of this tribalism. Gandhi centered his entire philosophy on satyagraha, insisting on truth. For Gandhi, truth was not a flexible tool to be altered for political convenience or community bias. He famously stated, "Truth is God," emphasizing that truth is an absolute, universal reality that transcends all human divisions. His campaign against untouchability was direct challenge to the colored prejudices of his era. He argued that the practice of caste discrimination was a deep distortion of the spiritual truth that all human beings share the same value, share the same divine essence. By anchoring his social and political movements in this unyielding commitment to objective truth, Gandhi showed that true social reforms require stripping away communal prejudices to recognize our shared humanity. The economic and scientific realm, the neutrality of the data and discovery. The world of science, the worlds of science and economics provide clear proof that truth exists independent of human opinion. A mathematical equation or a chemical reaction does not change its behavior based on the identity of the person studying it. The laws of physics operate exactly the same way in New Delhi, New York, or Nairobi. When Galileo Galilei looked through his telescope and discovered evidence supporting the heliocentric model, his findings directly challenged the colored religious doctrines of the 17th century church. The church forced him to recant and placed him under the house arrest, trying to suppress his discovery. Yet their actions could not alter the orbit of the earth, as Galileo quietly muttered, Eppur si muove, and yet it moves. The objective truth of the solar system remained completely unaffected by the political and religious preferences of the state. In modern economics, data and structural realities display a similar stubborn neutrality. Inflation, fiscal deficit, and rising unemployment figures do not alter their real world impact to suit a government's political public relation campaign. The Economic Survey of India consistently emphasizes that sustainable development requires looking at economic facts clearly and objectively. If a nation ignores if a nation ignores real data on rural distress or rising economic inequalities, no amount of polished rhetoric can prevent the resulting structural slowdown. Market forces and economic realities eventually expose any attempt to color the data, proving that long term prosperity can only be built on a foundation of unvarnished economic facts. The psychological and media landscape, navigating the post truth era. In the modern digital age, preserving the colorless nature of truth has become an increasingly difficult psychological challenge. This rise of social media algorithms has created powerful echo chambers that cater directly to our cognitive biases. These platforms are designed to feed users information that confirms their existing political and social views, trapping individuals in customized realities. In this environment, truth is frequently colored by our emotional preferences. People are drawn to stories that make them feel validated regardless of whether those stories are finally accurate. This psychological vulnerability has fueled the post-truth era, where objective facts where objective facts carry less weight in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. Misinformation campaigns deliberately add emotional and political colors to facts to cause social division and political unrest. When public debate becomes a clash between deeply polarized, colored narratives, the shared ground needed for democratic discussion disappears. The trust in vital public institutions like the judiciary, scientific bodies, and independent media erodes rapidly, leaving society vulnerable to manipulation. Navigating this landscape requires individuals to develop strong critical thinking skills, and the psychological maturity to seek out objective facts even when those facts challenge their personal beliefs. In international relations, the search for truth is constantly complicated by national self interest and geopolitical rivalries. The field of geopolitics is often driven by realpolitik, where powerful nations routinely color the truth to justify their foreign policies. One nation's one nation's freedom fighter is frequently labeled by another as a terrorist, and interventions launched in the name of democratization are often transparent covers for securing valuable natural resources or expanding strategy influence. To counter this destructive cynicism, the international community has worked to establish universal framework based on objective truths about human dignity. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals represents collective efforts to rise above national biases. These frameworks are built on the objective truth that every human being, regardless of nationality, is entitled to fundamental rights, clean water, quality education, and safety from violence. When nations gather at forums like the UN General Assembly or the IPCC climate summits, Long-term success depends entirely on their willingness to face global truth objectively, such as the reality of climate change, rather than viewed through the narrow lens of short-term national advantage. To see the truth clearly without distorting colors of prejudice, ideology, or personal bias is one of the highest achievements of human character. It requires intellectual honesty and the courage to accept realities even when it makes us uncomfortable or contradicts our long held assumption. The pursuit of truth is not a passive act. It is an active lifelong commitment to check our biases, questioning comfortable consensus, and standing up for the objective facts in the face of widespread misinformation. As the world becomes more interconnected yet politically fragmented, protecting the colorless purity of truth is vital for the survival of democratic societies. We must deliberately strengthen our public institutions, safeguard the independence of the judiciary, support free and rigorous scientific inquiry, and cultivate a public culture that values objective evidence over emotional rhetoric. The timeless insight of Rabindranath Tagore's Gitanjali remains our best guide for the future. A vision of a society where the clear stream of reasons has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habitat. By keeping the stream of human reason clear and uncolored, we ensure that truth remains the steady, reliable foundation of human progress, justice, and universal unity.